Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Plastic Surgery Unfiltered. I'm your host, Dr. Armando Davila, joined as always by
Dr. David Tur.
Thank you for joining me again.
Of course.
Today, what we're going to talk about is snake oil.
Ooh, one of my favorite topics.
Best topic ever.
Yep, absolutely.
So I think we'll start this off by just talking a little bit about the industry can be very problematic, I think, sometimes because of all the things that come to market so quickly. Social media has obviously exacerbated this. And there's been a topic that I've been wanting to talk about for a couple of weeks.
Absolutely.
That's been on the mind, and that is PDGF.
Excited. PDGF, man. It's all over the place. It's a really hot topic in the aesthetic industry.
Yeah. Like, I don't know, give us an introduction, I guess, onto what PDGF is.
So PDGF very basically is a growth factor. And as a product, it is approved for use in certain applications, for example, in bone grafts and orthopedics. But recently, a company was marketing PDGF as an aesthetic product. And the way it was being sold is as a topical product for use after microneedling or some, superficial procedures like lasers to improve recovery, which is a whole other conversation we can talk about. But kind of on the side, there were influencers and injectors that were training people to inject this product. And, I think they were being quite misleading in their marketing and in the way that this product was being sold.
Yeah, I think that, I think that there's now a semi-notorious video in our circles of this person like taking a needle that literally says do not inject on the side, and they're being video recorded as they inject it into someone. And I think that there's this idea that the counterculture is cool these days and don't believe anything, and the company actually played into this quite a bit. So when you look at their website, they have just a ton of jargon and confusing sentences that even created confusion amongst actual providers and medical doctors, right? And so they did this, and you could tell from the website that they did it quite intentionally with the intent to confuse.
I think it was totally intentional.
And I think it was one step further, right? I think that as we talked to some injectors and we tried to give them their advice from our background, that it was one step even further. Again, the PDGF was approved within another product that was approved. It wasn't approved as a standalone.
Well, I think we
can talk about approval, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, the regulatory side of the FDA is like sort of a hobby of mine and a little bit of a passion. And so I think it's important that people understand that there are very specific classifications of things, and then there are ways that things are marketed.
Right.
So in the eyes of the FDA, there are cosmetics, and then there are drugs and devices.
And biologics.
And biologics,
like tissue products,
which is like a whole like a whole other podcast.
Yeah.
Any drug and device at its core is intended to modify some function of the body, right? Those are the things that you think of, a heart valve, a breast implant, a filler, neurotoxin, things like that. Those are all drugs and devices. Cosmetics are intended to affect the appearance of the body. And I think that when that terminology was first created, we all kind of instinctively know what a cosmetic is, right? It's something that you apply like makeup to affect the appearance of the body. But what's happened is a lot of companies have taken products that have no real scientific rigor, have never really been studied as to whether they are safe or have any efficacy, and are being used, especially in aesthetics, in the realm of drugs and devices. For example, when a company wants to market something that is not approved, they will say in their marketing, this is designed to improve the appearance of redness or swelling or whatever it is. And that's kind of how they get around that part of the FDA. So,
sure.
I mean, that's the first thing people should start looking at. When you look at some of these things, if you see improve the appearance of, you can be pretty sure that it's a cosmetic and not actually a drug or device.
Exactly.
And in fact, if you go on the FDA's website, there is a laundry list of companies that have gotten warning letters to this effect, that they are marketing cosmetics as drugs or devices that are not approved.
Sure. And I think that that's why in our industry it's a little bit challenging, because why do people go to a medical spa or an injector? It's to improve their appearance. And so that terminology feels like, oh yeah, I do want to improve my appearance.
It feels very natural.
It feels very natural. And so the companies have manipulated that terminology to sell things, right? And I think it's like, for example, you can go to your Sephora, you could go to your Ulta, right? And you can get products that have hyaluronic acid in it, right? Hyaluronic acid, one of your body's natural water molecules. And naturally, those things, when put into a topical product, may in fact be used as a cosmetic to improve the appearance of the skin or body. And that's different than a hyaluronic acid that is contained within a filler, which people come to improve their appearance, but it's not the same. Right.
But is injected and has a much different risk profile.
Exactly.
Than something that's truly placed topically on the skin.
Because it alters and affects the function of the body to a certain extent. And people say, well, it's not changing my body overall, but it is changing things on a cellular level and has some effect.
I mean, I think, when you think about it, those definitions are pretty clear.
Sure. It's just that again, when you get into the cosmetic world, it starts to get a little bit blurry.
Yeah. I mean, and going back to the discussion about PDGF, where that was even more confusing is that PDGF is approved in certain applications. And I think it's important to define another term that people talk about all the time, which is off-label use. Mm-hmm. So drugs and devices get their approval with the FDA with a specific indication. A drug might be to treat a specific disease, a device might do a certain thing. But a lot of times those drugs and devices can be used off-label, meaning for things that were not originally studied for that indication, but are still safe and efficacious. And in fact, I would say most of the drugs and devices we use in medicine across the board, not just in aesthetics, are used off-label. And that's totally appropriate. Now, PDGF was trying to walk this fine line because PDGF as a molecule, as a substance, is in certain approved devices, and I think they're all devices. But
again, you're right, and this is why it got so confusing. We're even struggling to talk about it. The devices that were used were approved. Right. The devices themselves. The PDGF as an individual molecule was not approved. And
there is a topical like a cream that contains PDGF as well.
That has an approval for a different market. And so, but we've talked about this. We work with the Musculoskeletal Transplant Foundation, and I sometimes talk to them about they sell us this kit. Okay, this kit that we use to harvest fat. And one of the things that I sometimes talk about is, hey, you have this little valve and it falls on the floor. And sometimes when people open it, can you just sell us the valve? And they're like, well, no, because I got the kit approved by the FDA as a kit. And you're like, well, that's silly. What a stupid bureaucratic thing. No, because the way that kit is sterilized, the way we made sure that the packaging works a certain way, the way it's supposed to be deployed was approved by the FDA as that unit. And so the minute you yank a small component of it out of it, it no longer is the approved product. Right. And so I do think that's another way that PDGF started to get kind of challenging here because it was bundled into a treatment and that was like, oh, this is the approved product.
Right. But it actually went, I'd say, one or two maybe steps further, kind of out of bounds.
Yeah.
And so when, we had a rep in our office who was talking about this product.
Oh, yeah.
And I asked her, how is this approved? And she said, well, it's not approved, it's registered as a cosmetic. And I said, wait a second, this form is registered as a cosmetic? Yes. But, kind of on the side, you're telling us that we should be injecting this? And she said, well, it's an off-label use. No, if we were taking the bone graft that had PDGF in it and injecting that would be an off-label
Correct.
use. Not taking this syringe that contains something that is approved in another product and injecting it. And in fact,
we don't actually know. That's the point. We don't actually know. So we don't know what's in the syringe because it has not actually been evaluated by the FDA anyway. And that's why when you look at cosmetics, again, another statement that you see on your bottles is what is it? It's the statements within have not been evaluated by the FDA. And that's another key cosmetic thing. When we put hyaluronic acid in your face cream, the FDA is not looking to see whether or not it has 12% hyaluronic acid. They don't actually care.
Well, there are for cosmetics there are still certain
standards.
Manufacturing standards, but you're right. And they're not held to the same standard as a drug or a device.
Sure. They can't make false or misleading claims to a certain extent about their advertising, but it is not so rigorous as like they're looking at
100%.
whether or not that PDGF molecule is like biologically active or whatever it's supposed to be doing.
And you know, like you said, on the syringe itself, it says not intended for injection.
Yeah.
And then kind of on the side, people are saying, oh, well, it's okay to inject. Like, you know, we have no idea what that does when it's injected. We know what it does when it's used as, you know, in these other applications, but we don't know how this is going to act. I mean, this is sort of a pet peeve of mine when we use things, even with things like microneedling or post-treatment, right? Because you're saying, well, we're using this product on the skin and we're driving it in with microneedling, and then it's like, wait a second, but you're saying this isn't intended to affect the function of the body or just sit on the surface, but you're putting it in with microneedling. Like, again, technically to me, that now is in the realm of a drug or a device.
Sure. And that's where all of this stuff starts to get very blurred. And you know, to kind of wrap up the PDGF discussion, I think, again, this is like this huge distinction. It's like when something is approved for something, like something that people get a lot is Botox or any neuromodulator or neurotoxin. Botox is approved for glabellar line. I mean, I think it has a couple indications at this point, but I think the original on-label indication was for glabellar lines, right?
Yep.
And so when Botox does their marketing, they are allowed to talk about to the consumer glabellar lines, right? That's it. Mm-hmm. Now, we know it works on the muscle unit, and then physicians or other qualified providers can use it off-label to inject other locations that are not the glabellar lines, but still are similar in structure and function to a certain degree.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. That's total. And again, that is very much in line with medications and devices used across all of medicine.
Correct. What PDGF did is took a product, did not get it approved at all. They just made a product that was intended to just be a cosmetic and then said, use it off-label. You can't use it off-label because there is no label.
There is no on-label for that
on-label
particular
indication.
Device or drug.
Yes.
Like that product there is no on-label because it's registered as a cosmetic.
And so that is in my opinion, the literal definition of where snake oil came from. It is, you are just putting something in your body that has absolutely no validity at all.
Yeah, no data behind whether it's efficacious or safe because, you know, in this
safety is the big case here.
Yeah, I mean, in this application, it has not been tested.
Yes. And so then you had like, you know, people who were, you know, these influencers who started going and were riding this influencer train, you know, and started saying, okay, we're doing stuff. And at one point, right, I remember the salmon sperm facials. It's like, okay, it's a facial, right? It's like, but people are paying thousands of dollars to inject this, particularly in the orbit, which is an extremely dangerous zone to inject anything into. Its vasculature. This is an area where even experienced injectors worry about generating retinal injury, blindness, things like that. And now we're injecting a product where the syringe literally says, do not inject near their eye. Right. And at least to a certain extent, the worst we've heard so far is, you know, severe granulomatous reactions and redness and kind of terrible things. But it could have been and still could be potentially, you know, blindness and other issues that are related to it. And so it is, you know, I think it is a little bit on how we regulate things in the industry and what a problem that is, you know?
I mean, let's switch gears a little bit though, because I want to talk about something that we're studying here in our practice that is at the moment used off-label, but they're trying to do exactly the right thing and get a new on-label indication.
Yes, I think that's a great topic, right? Because, you know, I think that people can also misunderstand us and say that we are not interested in a technology like PDGF, and that's not true, right? What did we do the minute they started announcing this to us? We went to the company, we've gone to another company too, and said, hey, if you want to see if this is efficacious, we'll help you study it. Like, we'll help you look at it and see if you are going to, like, what it does. Yep. And what's funny is some of the companies have outright said, like, no.
They're not really interested.
We're not interested. We're not, and this is important, guys. Like, there are companies out there that are selling things, and they don't actually even want to know if it works or not.
I mean, it's, you know, if you do the study and it doesn't show any efficacy or God forbid it's unsafe, then you're kind of screwed.
Yeah. So they rather just use people as human guinea pigs to see if their stuff works. And really, they don't care as long as they sell their stuff and get out.
Yeah, I think that happens a lot.
It is, but it's become worse. And it is the fast fashion of the cosmetic industry and the medical spa industry right now. It's take whatever is hot, sell it to a bunch of people, put it in their bodies, put it in their face. We have no idea what's going to happen to them long term, and we don't care. We've made our buck, and then on to the next fad.
Yeah,
you know?
I think you're exactly right.
And so, like, you know, there are things that gradually, it does take time. And so, I mean, this is a great example, right? We have, I think we want to, you're mentioning Galaflex or PDA4HP,
yeah,
right?
absolutely. So, like, for people that don't know, Galaflex is it's a soft tissue support scaffold. It's made by BD and Galatea, and it's designed to be placed into the body. And over about 2 years, it degrades and is replaced by firm collagen to provide support to wherever you put it. Its only on-label indication right now is for generic soft tissue support, but BD, because it's used very commonly in breast surgery, particularly in revision or secondary aesthetic breast surgery, and now more commonly even in primary breast surgery. So BD, you know, wanting to do the right thing, wants to get an on-label indication for Galaflex. And so they have launched a large multi-center trial to get that indication.
Yeah, and not only, I think they're searching for a on-label indication, period. Again, right now it's indicated for something else. We're using it off-label. But more so, they also want to get an on-label indication for something that actually matters, right?
Sure.
Which is capsular contracture. And again, there's all this history behind this stuff, and I think it's obviously lost to the patient, right? But if anyone, you know, most people in the world know someone or have experienced breast cancer, right? Mm-hmm. And so if you have had breast cancer within the last decade or 2 decades, and you had reconstruction,
implant-based reconstruction.
Implant-based reconstruction, thank you. Then almost everyone has encountered something known as acellular dermal matrix. And it goes by a bunch of brands and names, Flex HD, Alloderm, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, there's a bunch
of them at this point. But, you know, this is another part where things get kind of confusing for people. So people have had this implanted in their body, right? And again, it got a on-label indication for soft tissue support. Now it's a biologic, so it's a little bit different.
Biologics are a little different.
Yeah.
They actually don't even have. They don't have indications.
They don't have indications per se, but like it was being marketed, I think, for soft tissue support. And again, this is confusing because again, what is a biologic? A biologic is something that comes from a human or other or animal-based tissue.
Yeah, exactly.
And as long as there's different levels, and as long as it's not modified significantly and et cetera, it can sort of be used one-to-one. Again, let's not get into the details of that. But we started using that in breast reconstruction for a variety of reasons. And over time, it started to evolve that there was a potential to reduce capsular contracture with the use of this material. And the reality is that even to this day, we don't know because no one's really bothered to do a large-scale study on doing that. And it's continued to just sort of be we think it's happening, and we have anecdotal data it happens. We have papers published that seem to indicate it's happened, but no study has kind of gotten the gumption to fund a full-scale trial because it's expensive, you know?
Sure.
And so I applaud BD and Galatea for wanting to explore this and spending a significant amount of capital to figure it out for the consumer and for the patients and for everybody, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's because, you know, it's such a common use that I think it's totally appropriate that we do that. You know, we had talked earlier about how, you know, we want to be at the cutting edge of things. You know, we want to bring new technology to our patients, but, you know, at the same time, we have to meter that with truth and to make sure that it's safe and efficacious. And so, you know, I have patients come in not infrequently that saw something on Instagram. I saw this guy doing this. I saw this guy injecting that. And, you know, certain things we agree with and will use, and certain things just don't have the data to support it. And so there's certain things that we don't have in our practice because we don't feel like it's safe.
Oh,
and,
absolutely.
You know, and we don't know long-term what the results and what the repercussions of using that are going to be. And so I think, you know, I know that there's some surgeons, some providers out there that kind of always want to be at the cutting edge. I think we're probably, we're there, but we're like one step more cautious than some of these people.
Yeah, I think that what cutting edge means to us and what it means for the world is, cutting edge to us does not mean being first to market on absolutely every single product. There are products out there that will get presented to us, and that company has done a lot of research. They've done a lot of background information. They have a lot of data behind it, and it's worth going first to market.
Absolutely.
And then there's some that aren't. And, there's a little bit of a heartbreaking story from an organization, I think like Daxxify, for example, which is a type of neurotoxin like Botox. Again, Daxxify is it's a wonderful product. It works great. It works better in some people than other neurotoxins. But Daxxify was a product that was studied for years. I mean, years and years. And they did a lot of research and a lot of studies behind it. And even with all that data, when they deployed it into the common public, the way people used it caused
it was even one step kind of more unfortunate. It was the messaging.
The messaging, yeah.
And that this will last 6 months, or whatever the messaging was at the time. And it turned out it wasn't quite right. It was still longer than the other neurotoxins, but maybe it didn't hit exactly what was being marketed. And so people were very disappointed, which was unfortunate because it is a great product.
Yeah. And so even when things have a lot of data behind it, it can also not translate to, actual results. And so there's a bunch of things that go into it, how people use it, different dilutions, all this stuff that kind of goes into how people use the product. And so to me, to take a product to wrap up like with PDGF that is so far off the curve, right? Yep. Where it's like, there's no indication, there's no on-label use, there's no approval. There's literally a syringe that says do not inject. And then you have people injecting it and then announcing to the world because they have 100,000 followers that this is a thing,
a miracle drug basically.
Yeah. And then just as fast as they picked it up, 6 months or 6 weeks later, they drop it.
Right.
And then
they're on to the next
thing. And then someone, the people who got it injected and are left with lifelong granulomatous disease, they're the ones stuck holding the bag.
Right.
And so, no medicine is perfect. No science is perfect. And I take it all with a grain of salt. And I do think that at least I believe in some things that are, you could consider our pseudo-science-y, but I also balance that with the risk profile, soothing music during a treatment that helps me meditate is not going to hurt me.
It's not going to give you some permanently disfiguring problem.
Yes, exactly.
Right?
And so you have to balance those things together,
Absolutely.
But to go back to the study, I guess we can tell people a little bit about that, the study process and kind of what goes into an FDA trial, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, FDA trials are big, long, and expensive. Again, when it comes to Galaflex, this is a multi-center trial, meaning that there are practices all across the country that are participating. Basically, patients with capsular contracture, there's a whole laundry list of inclusion and exclusion criteria for every clinical trial. But basically, it's patients with capsular contracture with breast implants, and the patients are randomized to either Galaflex or no Galaflex. And the primary endpoint, meaning kind of the results they're looking for, is whether the capsular contracture recurs or whether there's a malposition, because Galaflex also provides some structural support. And, again, I mean, it's a big undertaking to study this. So we're proud and we're excited to be part of that.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, again, there's no absolute truth in life. I guess there's a few, but in the search for truths, this is, how we do our part. And it takes a lot of effort from our practice to bring this to people, because it takes a lot of personnel, time, and effort to search for that kind of truth and give that people that.
Sure.
And in the meanwhile, we have patients, and I do recommend it to patients, even though,
all the time.
Again, it's technically an off-label use, because we believe it to be true, and it seems to move in that direction. We just don't know now.
Because it's approved, and we know that it's safe because of, it's safe.
We know it's safe, yeah.
Exactly. And so, and I'm very honest when I tell patients about it, particularly in primary, let's say like a primary breast augmentation, I say, I don't have a paper to tell you what the malposition rate is with and without Galaflex. I use it in a lot of revision surgery. So I think it's a good idea for you for reasons A, B, and C. But it's up to you.
Sure.
And I let them make their decision. And, but to me, that's the kind of informed conversation that you need to have with people.
Oh, yeah, of course. Instead of just like these tidbits from just influencer-based stuff.
Yeah, somebody, this is the greatest thing, some sliced bread. Come and let me just inject this random stuff into your face.
Yeah. I think that because I think people also need to know that these things are available, right? And I want to do a whole other episode on systemic symptoms associated with breast implants.
That's another
big topic.
You'll get me good and heated on that one.
But I think that a lot of patients that have issues with their implants, people who have implants for 15, 20 years, and they're having problems with their implants. Again, those implants are old. They've evolved several generations since those were placed. The implants are not permanent devices. Again, people have not been told that by their surgeon, and that is absolutely a truth. And a lot of them are probably having symptoms more associated with things like capsular contracture, rupture, and other problems, and they just don't know about it because maybe to a certain extent surgeons want to suppress, or the people want to suppress that. I don't know. I'm not sure.
It's also just complicated. Like your average consumer doesn't understand what some of the implications of these devices are.
Sure. And I think they weren't told, right?
Probably not.
Or maybe they were, and it just, you have something that's in your body for 10, 15 years, you may also forget,
Well, breast implants are a great example where we probably didn't do as a field as good a job as we should have. And then the FDA stepped in, and now we have the decision checklist that includes all of these things. And, when things kind of go off the rails a little bit, then at least, there's things that are great about the FDA. There's things that aren't great about the FDA, but at least I think in general that they really do try and keep consumers safe.
They try, yeah, as much as they can.
And as well informed as possible. And I think that's a great example of that.
And I think it's, are they perfect? No. Is it better than nothing? Yes, definitely.
100%.
And so as much as they're a pain sometimes to deal with, I really appreciate that they exist to help consumers.
Sure.
And so, I think that there's a very careful balance I think we have to strike as surgeons and as people who know the entire spectrum. I think for another topic in another episode is really, and I know I've done several episodes on med spas, but this idea that for many people, med spas are low risk endeavors, right? Most people can open a med spa with very little capital, very little investment. There's very little malpractice coverage for these things. And they can go, and if they inject, PDGF, what are they out? They're out like a...
Well, I guess it depends on how big this thing gets. In theory, you could probably lose your medical license.
Well, we could. What I'm saying is that...
Well, but if it's a nurse or, some mid-level or whatever,
I'm not sure.
Who knows what the implications are?
We don't know. But what I'm saying is that there is some stakes in this for people who have trained for over a decade to bring knowledge and truth and transparency to people.
Yep.
And there is lower stakes, I think, in some cases for people who have the worst thing they can lose is a few thousand followers.
But, the other thing is that the consumer should also educate themselves, when
that's hard.
And, I think we spend a lot of time, for example, with our patients when we do consults to try and explain everything as thoroughly as we can to people so they know what they're getting themselves into. And
I know. Sometimes I think at the end of my consults, their eyes are glazed over. They're like, you were very informative.
Right. But if someone's just like, hey, this is great, let's do this. Maybe you should be asking a few more questions. And, doing research online is not the same as doing a clinical trial or doing research. Mm-hmm. But I think the average consumer should try and educate themselves to some degree on what is being done to them.
I love when people come in and they say, like in our checklist, we say how much research have you done? And, I think some other people bash the internet, bash the consumer. But to me, I actually love it. I love it when people have come with something that I can talk to them to, even if it's not quite accurate or quite right.
Yeah, but at least you have a starting point.
Yeah, and we can do many episodes on all these topics.
Sure.
But I really appreciated that about people, and just like I appreciate when they have second opinions, when people come at it from different angles.
Yep.
That way we can find what fits best for them. But certainly there are sort of limits, and I find that one of my responsibilities as a surgeon and as a physician is to evaluate those limits on behalf of the patient and the consumer, and then help protect them,
Right.
and help guard them from things that really shouldn't be on the market.
Yeah, I mean, and I hope we can use, for example, this podcast and even social media as a way to educate people on our opinion about certain things.
Yeah.
Again, like this PDGF thing, I mean, there's been a lot of pushback about it, and I feel like there probably needs to be more.
Yeah, there probably should be a little bit more. So, well, man, it was great talking to you again.
Yeah,
And
this was a great episode.
We'll bring some more like heavy hits on the misconceptions of the world. So, thank you again, everyone, for joining us. This is Plastic Surgery Unfiltered. I'm Dr. Armando Davila.
Dr. Dave Tur.
See you next time.